Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Karan Rose.
Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. As usual, it is your boy, Mr. Rose. And DJ, you gotta fade us all the way out. You gotta fade us out because we gotta talk to the people. We gotta talk to the people. This is episode number 149. It is February 20th, 2024. My goodness. Folks, I owe you a major apology. I I said that 2024, I was going to get back on my pre-2023 output. And you know, this February, it's February 20th, and I'm now realizing that my last episode was January 31st. And, you know, February, this is the time when Carnival happens here in Trinidad and Tobago. And my family started to fly in from February 2nd, I believe. And it just so happened that more people came than anticipated, and I ended up having to give up my essentially my home. I have not been home. I've not been able to be home since February 2nd. And honestly, I just took the time to just hang out with fam. I still had a bunch of other things to do. I mean, work still has been getting done, and we've still been showing up in a bunch of other spaces and whatnot. But, you know, moving forward, I will not be letting, you know, weeks go by without jumping onto the Digipreneur FM podcast. It's just not going to happen. But nonetheless, we've been having some fun for the year, you know. The YouTube's been more active. We've been vlogging, you know. So if you haven't checked out any of the vlogs that have come out so far, just jump on YouTube, type in my name, Karen Rose. I'll probably link to YouTube channel in the show notes as well. But check out some of the interviews and some of the vlogs that have come out, because again, we've been experimenting. We've been having fun. This year is a year where we really want to I really want to build on YouTube. I really want to get more video content out. And I want that to play a big part for the brand moving forward, right? Because there's something about seeing people, you know, during the interviews. So yes, we love the podcast because we can do other things whilst tuning in. But YouTube is a big part of what I want to have in the fold for my content strategy moving forward. And on top of that, it's the platform that allows us to monetize here in the Caribbean too. So yeah, we definitely want to get that on and popping. You know, and it's really interesting because I have YouTube Studio, right? And YouTube Studio gives you all your data and your analytics for your platform. And you know, the YouTube channel has been growing. We're at 4,140 subs so far on the platform. When it comes to the monetization, so if you don't know how to monetize on YouTube, the threshold is you need to have at least, you need to have at least 500 subscribers. You need to have at least 500 subscribers on your channel. You also need to have at least 3,000 watch hours in the last 365 days, or 3 million public shorts views. right, in the last 90 days. So as of right now, my eligibility for monetization is looking like I am at 1,900 public watch hours in the last 365 days. Again, I need 3,000 um, in order to qualify for monetization. So go check out the vlogs and some of the interviews that we did over there. We got to get those numbers up, right? And then the other big thing too is another reason why again I wanted to focus on YouTube is because people forget that YouTube is a search engine, right? And if you want to take up more real estate online, you need to be venturing outside of social media, right? You got to venture outside of social media. Have your website, build on YouTube because the search engines are going to be putting your content into more spaces than you know, right? And when people are doing their searches, their Google searches or their Bing searches, you want your content and your brand to be showing up, right? So, enough about all that. Today's episode is an interview that we did over on Digital World last week with Xayli Barclay. Listen, the world famous Xayli Barclay. She's a Trinbagonian that moved out to the US and honestly has become one of the biggest names in marketing and content creation, specifically in the video marketing world. She's become one of the biggest names out there, right? She is doing some amazing things. Every time I look at this woman and see the platforms that she is on, it's just amazing. So Xayli Barclay is a video content creation coach and thinkific expert for online business owners. She specializes in helping entrepreneurs stand out, attract, nurture, and sell to their target audience with video content. Through educational video content and online courses, she teaches others how to effortlessly create the visual learning experiences they've always dreamed of to unlock multiple revenue streams, attract paid opportunities, and connect on a deeper level. She has worked with companies like Google, ConvertKit, Thinkific, Later, Paramount Pictures, Ecamm Live, and Descript, and the list goes on, right? It's a great pleasure for me to have had the pleasure and privilege of getting to interview her with my new co-host, Ricolia Phillip, on the Digital World. So I'm going to cue that up and you guys can take a listen. It's a really, really good interview. Now, we did have technical difficulties within the last minute of the recording of the interview. We're interviewing her via Zoom, and then the last minute kind of went into a robot voice, and we had to cut the interview early. But nonetheless, we were pretty much done. We were wrapping up. I think we were on the last question, and then it kind of just started to mess up from there. But it's a great interview. Take plenty notes. There's a lot of information and gems packed into this interview. And again, this interview is from our show, The Digital World, that happens on Freedom 106.5 every single Fridays from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. I will link to that in the show notes so you guys can check out future episodes. Without further ado, here is the interview with Xayli Barclay.
I got started years ago. So I got here in time to go to college, actually. So that was years ago. I'm not going to age myself, haha. But I got a scholarship to go to school in the US and was super excited. I always knew that I wanted to have my own business. My dad is an entrepreneur and I always looked up to him. So when I got here, I lost my fire for entrepreneurship because my dad wasn't around and I decided I was going to be a corporate baddie, as they call it now. And so got into the corporate space, and 2 days into my first internship in the middle of Manhattan, I was like, all right, this ain't for me. So we got to figure out what we were initially doing. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 days in and on the elevator going into work, I was like, oh, all right, this is how this works. Okay. And so decided that I was going to start putting myself out there online. So this was around 2007. And I started putting myself out there. I started a blog. I started connecting with people in person, but bringing my personality online. And so I started with a blog, and as time developed, I got into YouTube. I remember filming my first YouTube video. I uploaded it, and 2 hours later, I took it down because I was like, this is not for me. I don't want people to see me and be in my business. And that's the feeling that a lot of us have, right?
Yeah.
And a few years later, I realized, oh, I cannot thrive out here without getting on camera and really building a personal brand. And so that's what I started doing. And I was ahead of the game. I was ahead of all of this. In 2015, I was teaching people how to do what I do, which is get on camera, share your expertise, combine it with your experiences, because the average person is not willing to do that. And we're not going to do what everybody is doing. We're going to do the opposite, right? So I'm going to put myself out there and build my business. And so I did. And I still stand in rooms today here, and I'm like, wow, like, what am I doing here? Like, look at these people. And video got me into those rooms, got me into those spaces, built so many opportunities for me. So that's just really quickly how I got started.
So you started off with the blog, right? What made you start with the blog first and not just, deep dive into video when you got started?
It was just what was available, and it was what everyone was doing at the time. So everyone was blogging, and I felt
Yeah.
like I was super dope. I felt like I had a different perspective. I was a Trinidadian living in Brooklyn, New York. We don't have voices for, those kind of stories and things like that. Like, I didn't know anyone that lived the life I lived, and I could have seen it in the online space, even if it was a blog.
Yeah.
Personally, I didn't know any of those people. And yeah, so I was like, I want to share my experiences and show other people what my life is like, kind of thing. So yeah.
I love that you said that because I'm actually curious as to how you have been able to use your Trinbagonian heritage and implement that into your work and how you go about marketing and all of that. How have you been able like to bridge that gap?
Yeah, I could honestly do a better job of doing it. I don't do it as much, but I feel like it just comes out in my personality anyway. If you really listen to me, you'll hear my accent. If you look at like my stories and behind the scenes, I do less now because I live in Dallas compared to when I was living in Brooklyn in the middle of the pot with everyone. So I'm a bit more diluted now. I always say I have a Trinidadian, New York, Texan accent by now.
Yeah.
But if you pay close attention, I always talk about it. Part of my journey in getting on camera, especially in the US, was being afraid of like people judging me for my accent. Am I gonna be suppressed by the algorithms because I have an accent? That was one of my biggest fears. And then I realized as I started to create more and more, people loved that about me. They loved the difference in my content and the things that I was sharing and adding, like my story of growing up in Trinidad. And, people here don't have those experiences and they want to learn more about you.
Yeah.
And
So,
I think that's really important because I think whether it's personal brands or businesses, they tend to err on the side of, well, let me just do what everybody else is doing. And I think there really is a genuine fear of showing the things that make them different. Everybody wants to fit in. And I think that in itself, like taking the chance and sharing those stories, those unique stories, the unique experiences, and all of that is what people crave, and people want to see themselves in the people that they follow, the businesses that they follow, and all of that. So I think I'm glad that you highlighted that because I think that's one thing a lot of people miss when it comes to branding and marketing themselves.
no,
Absolutely.
definitely. I completely agree with what you're saying. And it's a weird walk when you live here. It's a balance, It's a balance of sometimes you don't want to show those differences too much because you can get suppressed. Like if we look at Nicki Minaj, she's now really embracing her Trinidadian culture. She never really used to before. And so it's kind of like now that she's reached this status of where she is now, she's embracing it more. We saw Rihanna embrace it more early in her journey, but Rihanna had a bigger push at that time. So it's also about discernment, and us not shunning anyone because of what they choose to do, when they choose to do, how they choose to do. But it's the thing that is going to differentiate you, and it's also going to come out in your work ethic, your work. So it's not only it's not only the culture. It's going to come out naturally if you are who you are. Like when people see me working all the time, they're like, where you get this work ethic from? I am Trinidad. I'm from the Caribbean. I'm here to get things done. Okay, I couldn't be in bed all hours of the damn day. I had to get my ass up and get shit done. So, oops, we're on the radio. And so I hope y'all are censoring me, and
We're
I hope
good. Yeah.
none of my siblings are listening. But so I apologize, guys. But in essence, things like that naturally come out in your brand and who you
Yeah.
are. So
And it's,
yeah,
you know what? It's funny that you say, you're from Trinidad, you're here to get things done, right? You have
yes,
that work ethic. When
yes.
typically, when we think of Trinis in Trinidad and work ethic, they don't always go in the same sentence because we don't work as
Mm,
hard in Trinidad, right? But when we leave and we go over to the US, to Canada, the UK, all of a
yeah,
sudden work ethic done pick up, right? It's sky high, right? Now, what was that transition like for you? Because me and you we did a swap, all right? I moved from Canada to
yeah.
here. And you came out to the so how was that transition for you coming over to the States, a whole new culture? Was it a culture shock for you? Did
Yeah.
you unlearn a lot of things in order to make a pathway forward in the US?
That's a really good question. Okay, so for me in my household, work ethic was always a thing. I didn't have that experience. Let me just say that. I gotta make my family proud here. But also coming over to the US to live, I would come on vacation all the time. So before I actually made the full transition, people would be confused, like, where you really living? You living here or you living there? So I would be in the US all the time. So my transition wasn't that difficult. My mom was already here, so I came to meet my mom. And I feel like things that I had to unlearn was being assertive and standing up for yourself. Coming from the country, because I lived in South, I'm from Deep South, I'm from Point Fortin.
Oh,
And
there you go.
jumping into the big city of New York City, which is like the place, like if you could survive there, as Alicia Keys says, you could survive anywhere. And so I had to learn survival and being assertive and not letting people push you around and things like that. If I think about the environment that I grew up in, which was very quiet, easygoing, I went to private school, like it was a huge contrast to just jump into that pot. But being assertive and knowing who you are and what you stand for and what you don't stand for, I had to learn that very quickly.
Mm.
And I mean, in your case as well, because I think that even though there is this assumption that you have a lot of people from the islands and this and the other, so you think that they'd be accustomed to us being there. Did you still struggle to sort of, I don't want to say fit in, but I guess be accepted into the fold and be on par with everyone else? Because I know for a lot of people, when it comes to working and living in the States, unfortunately, people from the Caribbean are sort of still considered to be a bit less than. So, like, how much of that did you still have to sort of like fight for?
That is a really good question. I'll tell you something. I never let that hold me back, to be really honest. I never had that mindset. And so it's just the way that I thought about myself. Like, and actually I did go through the transition of trying to fit in, but in my own way. First of all, when I was going to college, I was so busy. I was like working 4 jobs while going to school, and eventually survival superseded, the need for me to really like pay attention and be in school. And I'll
Mm.
tell you, it was one time where work was taking over everything. And one of my professors, I wrote a paper, and he said, ma'am, I know my class is 8 a.m., but this paper that you wrote, you're not from the US. You're not from America. Like you learned to write somewhere else. So I need you to make sure you have your tail in this seat by 8 a.m. Every, whatever day the
Yeah.
class was. So for me and my experience, it's how you carry yourself. If you feel like you're less than, people are going to treat you like you're less than. And I'm sharing that story to share, again, there are things on the back end that are going to show who you are and where you come from. And it's how you navigate and operate. In my school, the school I went to, which was St. Francis College, it was a few Trinidadians in there. Um, I wasn't really around them all the time. Like I said, I didn't spend a lot of extra time at school because I was working a lot. But it's how you carry yourself. If you respect yourself, people are going to respect you. And I learned that very quickly.
Being a woman of color and coming over to the US, right? For me, being someone of color and coming back to Trinidad, my experience was this was some of the first times I'd seen politicians that were black, CEOs of companies that were black. Coming from Canada, you don't really see much prominent black people in a lot of these spaces, right? Being a woman of color and now going into the States, how was that transition for you? Was it a lot harder to get into the spaces that you are in? Did you have to work 10 times harder? What was that transition like for you?
I feel like I was at an advantage coming from Trinidad because I saw people of color in power all my life, right? So, yes. So for me, I came with that mentality of why y'all think you can't do XYZ? Or, so that is definitely for me, um, it definitely helped me leverage when I walk into rooms. Like when I walk into a room, I know I have an aura. I know people are going to be like, well, who are you kind of thing. But that's innate. It's because of who I believe that I am. However, yes, we are going to have to work hard. But I grew up hearing my dad say, you're going to have to work harder than everyone. You're a woman of color, or I was in Trinidad, so you're a Black woman, so you are going to have to work harder. So the bar was already set. Like when people think I'm working hard, this is actually my baseline. And yes, it's unfair, but hey, I know what I signed up for, and I know the example that I'm setting. I know the space that I'm creating for others around me and behind me, and I'm committed to that. So,
I love that. I love more than just the bio, that amazing bio that Karen gave, but I actually love your story, and I get like a lot of identification with that. I'm not in the States, but I can identify with a lot of what you were saying. Something that I want to pivot on just a little bit is I mentioned your story, and I'm curious, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people, especially whether they're personal brands or they're trying to run their own business, something they hear a lot about is storytelling. You need to story to get great at that. Your brand needs to have a lot of storytelling techniques. But what exactly does that mean? And what exactly can they do or start doing to implement storytelling in their brand narrative or their business's brand narrative?
Yeah, storytelling is such a beautiful thing. And when you hear a story, you're going to remember it for years to come. You may not remember the person, what they had on, what they were, talking about besides what you heard them say about maybe how they grew up or, you know, and I feel like a lot of people discount their stories. We're so focused on straight out selling as a business owner or educating in order for people to buy our products. And sometimes we don't realize that we are the education. So when I say that, um, a lot of times we don't think about the journey that got us to where we are. We don't realize how powerful, like something somebody shared encouraged you to take action, to do something, or, a story is so long lasting. And when you share your journey, when you share, when you master the skill of picking a moment in a day that changed something for you, then you start seeing, okay, other people are relating, other people are understanding, people are building a deeper relationship with you. It's why we love influencers. We love the relatability. We love that they probably have gone through the same thing that we have. So I think it's really our we have to figure out as business owners how to merge that right? How to merge that storytelling into what you do. And it's genuinely important, but dig into your past, dig into how you got here. I just told you guys a few stories, right? And so somebody's going to latch on to one of those nuggets and remember it more than if I came on here and shared a framework or, something, which I feel like is what we're used to doing in the Caribbean. We're used to wanting to show how smart we are versus how I became smart, right? Or how I got here. So, ooh, I saw Karen's face. Like, what is she?
Yeah. She's preaching. Just to follow up on what you just said, how important is documenting versus creating?
Because documenting is more genuine, right? And it's funny the nuggets you'll get out of documenting something. Like sometimes I will leave my camera running and I'm creating, and then I look at myself from a different perspective of, oh, I didn't realize that I do this every time I do XYZ. Let me share that with my community. Creating is you setting up the whole thing, right? And so I think it's really smart that you document while you create so that you're able to see things from a different perspective. And so that, well, first of all, when we think about content right now, we are so over the 5 tips to do XYZ, or, we're over things like that. And we're looking for more of experiences. So show me how you specifically do something. That's going to make a complete difference. Tell me why you made that decision. Why did you choose to do XYZ if you knew it was going to be that hard? Or why are you making the decisions that you're making daily? Those things are going to build your brand and help you sell more versus doing what you see everyone else doing. Especially if you're looking at people in the US, you don't have to do what they're doing. Look around you and see what is special in your own environment and pull that to the forefront.
I love that. I love that. So, I mean, we're talking about businesses, and we are, of course, coming off of the very lustrous carnival season. Karen and I were discussing carnival and the industry and the way things are going and that sort of thing. But I want to hear from you in terms of, at least from your opinion. You are not here, so you may have a different perspective, not being in Trinidad and Tobago at the moment. But for you, what do you think carnival brands, or what makes carnival brands unique in their marketing needs?
Oh, that's a really good question. And forgive me if I'm not completely up to date on what's going on. I haven't been to Trinidad Carnival in about 6 years. So, um,
You're bad enough that your thoughts are going to be gold.
so what is standing out to me right now, as in what do I feel like they're doing really well?
It could be both. Like, what do you think they're doing well, and what do you think they can do to improve?
Okay. And what specific brands are you speaking about? Just so I can, give you.
Well, it doesn't have to be like any specific brand. So we're not necessarily calling names, but in terms of just like anyone who is in the carnival industry, whether it's mass bands, whether it's those who are like in the supplemental services, those who like design
or you could think of it like this. What are some of the things that when you're thinking of marketing, events, carnivals, what are some of the things that they should be doing? What are some of the stories that they should be telling? What are types of content they could be creating? Because right now what we see a lot of is we're still hard selling because we're still hard selling parties. We're still hard selling the mass, but we're not necessarily telling stories or leveraging or really creating content other than we're walking around through a party where there's a video man taking pictures of the women we can never find in real life.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so I'll be honest. From what I have been seeing, I see a lot of sameness. I see a lot of lack of innovation. I'm seeing the same thing that I've been seeing since I was interested in playing mass. So I feel like, these companies or businesses are more looking at it from a perspective of this was walking so long ago. Let me just do the same thing. I'm not going to try to innovate. I'm not going to try to do anything different. I don't know if they're all working with the same people. So it's like,
one man owns like 80% of all the brands.
Okay.
Right.
So he's hiring the same contractors.
That's what
basically.
you're looking like. Yeah.
Okay. So and it looks like that. It looks like you're hiring all the same contractors to just come in and do the same thing. It looks very there's no uniqueness out of it. I don't go on one specific account and know, oh, that's this account, unless I see like a logo or something to share like, okay, this is, so where is your uniqueness? What is the brand's identity? What is different about a specific brand? Also, when you guys are going through processes like inspiration, where are you guys pulling from? Why can't we see that? Why can't we as consumers be a part of the process of the brainstorming of when you are pulling inspiration from here or there, or take us on the journey of where you get your beads from? We have this idea everywhere. I don't want to say only in the Caribbean, that if I show XYZ, somebody's going to steal it. Right. And that's so far from the truth. If you're doing what you really want to do in the biggest, baddest, and best way possible, nobody can take anything from you. And I think it's more of letting us in behind the scenes. If y'all are at 2 a.m. brainstorming and a pasta corn soup boiling on the side, what is that experience like? Where are you guys pulling from? Like, take us on the journey of, if you're pulling from Carnival 1972, if Carnival is around, that, yes, it was, duh. But, uh, like, take us back on that journey and show us like what we're going to be indulging in and doing. Like, why can't we be a deeper part of the journey as consumers versus only seeing the end product? So that is one thing that I
Well, I think we hold on. Xayli just froze on that salient point.
A good point too.
And it was a very good point. We'll see if she comes back in or it unfreezes. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah,
You're
that
taking us
was,
about a journey.
yeah, I'm not really seeing that. I'm not seeing people deep diving into our culture and making me feel like I'm there before it even happens, versus, um, just seeing the outcome and the pretty costumes. It's just not enough anymore.
And you know what? And I think there's a growing skepticism now that Carnival is moving away, or Carnival is moving away from the culture and what it used to represent, and we're now focusing more on the pretty mass because pretty mass sells. And I was telling Ricolia earlier, when Carnival in Trinidad is being marketed to back in Canada and the States, it's more marketed as, this is the ultimate party island. This is the Caribbean spring break. Come party, have fun. You'll never have as much fun as this. And it's not really marketed. It's not, the cultural aspects of mass and Trinidad are not really marketed the way that they market pretty mass and playing on the road, right? How
Yeah.
can brands leverage video content, blogging, podcasting? How can they leverage some of these powerful tools to tell the stories that where mass really came from, to build that cultural connection?
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a little bit.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily like, okay, if you don't want to take us back and you don't want to embrace this culture, because we also have to respect who is the consumer, right? Like, if the consumer is, if the main consumer to play mass in a band is age 30, 35, they may not understand like the deep culture and all of that. I'm not saying that they don't, but they may not be interested in that. Fine. But so obviously it comes down to knowing like who your client or customer is. But I still feel there's a lack of capturing the feeling and the journey of pretty mass, even if that's what it is, versus just the outcome, just the wonderful shots on the road. And like, what's the build up to that? How stressed out are you? How much work did you put into this? What made you make specific decisions? Like, take us on the back end of that. Show us why you decided to create this premium experience versus this one. How are you deciding what is going to change next year first? Because you also have to, especially for your people that are returning, First of all, let's talk about segmentation. Understanding your people who are coming in. This is their first time. They have never done this before. How are we marketing as it pertains to segmentation? Or are you just depending on people who are returning? Now, what do you have to address because they are returning and they had a specific experience last year? How can you calm those fears or concerns through your marketing, right? So segmentation comes first, understanding who is where in the customer journey and how you can address their concerns, FAQs. Like, I don't even see those things. And maybe it's just that I'm not seeing it,
Oh, they
but
don't
there's
exist, so don't worry.
there's nothing to address concerns. There's nothing to address. Okay, if 20% of my audience is coming from the US, what can they expect? Like what should they expect? What is it like? Like we don't have any, we depend on somebody telling you, hey, so we meet and so ting. We don't know, like, what's the experience. And then when you tell other people, when I tell people about Carnival in Trinidad, like there's nothing for them to refer back to either, you know? So I think it's really, yes, we have influencers who cover those things, but what are these businesses doing to take the narrative into their own hands in order to guide people based on, these
Yeah.
experiences?
And to your point, right? When you only focus on the outcomes, the pretty pictures, the videos on the road, there's no lead up. So what are you doing for the rest of the year? When
Exactly.
we need to start moving away from just campaigns and start to
Season
marketing.
specifically.
Yeah, and start to market year round. But when you're not telling no stories, you're not creating no content, and you're only focused on the outcome, you're only ever going to be limited to Carnival Monday, Tuesday, and that's it. And whatever
Literally.
parties you're involved in the lead up.
And the thing is, as I mentioned season for a reason, because there was a time, I don't think it exists as rigidly as it used to a few years ago, but um right after the season ended, the carnival season ended, you'd go back into right back into Banner season, but there were very specific things happening within the carnival space in the lead up to Banner season, and then going into registration and all of that. But imagine if, outside of the carnival season, we start essentially training people who have not experienced carnival before or have just heard about
Mhm.
carnival and now they're interested. So you mentioned podcasts, videos, all the storytelling that we're talking about, letting people know, hey, this is what you may need to do to prepare for the season ahead, not just working out, you know, how to pack for, the season ahead, when you need to be on alert for band launches to register, um, giving people more insight into the cultural side of Trinidad and Tobago, the spirit of the season and all of that. So by the time registration has begun, people know exactly what they're getting themselves into, especially those who have said that the barrier for entry into Carnival is increasingly higher. There's some bands where they market it a lot, they're the more popular bands, but in reality, you on average cannot register unless you have a friend or link. So also sort of creating realistic expectations as well within reason,
Right.
I believe.
Right.
um I think it's very important. I also think that there's some bands that tend to be marketed more than others. I've seen experiences that tend to be marketed more than others. So imagine spending the entire year now where, as someone who may be interested or considering coming to Trinidad for Carnival, you're essentially spending however many months building that source of excitement and hype and consideration, so they know exactly what they want to do, how to do it, and how to plan their trip here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Zayli, to you, right? When it comes to um I want to switch gears and start talking to the business owners, right? Now, within the space that you have been in, you have been working with business owners across the world. And a big part of the things you talk about is building this personal brand, right? First of all, I want you to define what is a personal brand, and then let's dive into why Caribbean people are so adverse to building this personal brand. So what is a personal brand for our listeners that are tuned in?
Oh, I'm not going to give like the textbook definition of a personal brand, but it's definitely building a presence for yourself, especially in this time of the internet and being online. Building a brand for yourself and what you believe in, your morals, your values, putting yourself out there, whether it's, of course, you have to have a goal for your brand, whether it's based on, career goals or your own business goals, but it's really branding yourself as whatever it is you desire in the online space. And externally as well, but we're speaking about online. And so I think, ooh, when we think about the Caribbean, people have a feeling of, I'm not going to put myself out there. People are going to judge me. What are my friends from primary school going to think? They're going to think I think I'm this or that. If I put myself out there, if I start creating content to build my brand, or people used to tell me my eye was big when I was small. So if I get on camera, people are going to see that. That's a personal one. Uh, it's still big.
Yeah.
Things like that. I feel like we just go through a lot of like, who am I to talk about XYZ or to share my perspective or put myself out there? Or a lot of things that you're probably holding on to that are preventing you from building a personal brand or going to the next level. I think also for me, I would say lack of seeing what is possible, because I feel like what we see more of in the Caribbean is like a comedian or an artist. Like those are the people with personal brands versus, somebody who really wants to share. Well, let me share my 25 years of experience with you on camera. We're not seeing, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, because you're there, you're seeing it. But I feel like the really successful endeavors that we see aren't necessarily who you might be, the listeners, the people that are listening daily.
I love that. The thing is, a lot of people, and this is from what I've seen online as well as interacting with people as well. So I'm not a personal brand expert by any means, but I do know some of the things that are necessary into building a personal brand. Something I hear a lot from people is that they think that they have to share so much of their personal lives. And I think people tend to get mixed up between trying to build a personal brand versus sharing every element of who I am and what I do. So what would you tell those who are interested and considering building a personal brand, and they may have those sort of hang-ups in terms of trying to like create those boundaries and showcasing that you don't necessarily have to tell us what you ate every day for lunch,
Yeah.
any personal issues you may have with your partner, or you had a falling out with your boss, but how can
Yeah.
personable while also still retaining some level of your personal life.
Yeah. And when I hear people say those things, again, it comes back to who you are seeing getting traction or attention in the online space, and you comparing yourself and feeling like that is what I have to, like, I have to make a fool of myself, or I have to make people laugh, or I have to entertain people in order to build a personal brand. And that's not necessarily what it is. So obviously you're going to build your brand based off of your beliefs and the impact that you want to create in the space. Now, I could think about different variations of my brand as I continued building. When I first started, I was very into fashion and beauty, and then I had to pivot. Obviously, my messaging there was different from my messaging now, although it's still very much a part of who I am now and my messaging now. So first of all, give yourself room to breathe. Your brand is going to change. A lot of people feel like it needs to be perfect and dialed in before I start, and that's not true. Also, so obviously when I had a beauty brand and a beauty following, um, it was very different. Like my brand was very different. What I was sharing was very different. And my stories were very different as well. In that content, I may have been speaking about decisions that made me want to wear a specific hairstyle, or what happened when I went to the beauty supply store today, or why I chose a specific material to sew a specific dress. And, you know, what happened when I tried the first time. Stories are all around you. You're a living, breathing, walking story. And it does not mean I shared all of that without sharing, you know, what I had to eat today or, you know, so it's really, and also like, so what if you shared what you ate today? If I go on my stories right now and share that I'm eating a roti for lunch, you know what's going to happen to my DMs? It's going to blow up. And I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just relatability. Even if you share what you're having for lunch, people get to understand you a little better. Those are the things that I get booked based on. When I share, example, me sharing my story of having an accent, I can't tell you how many customers and clients that brings me because it's transparent and honest versus me sharing 5 tips if you have an accent. Like, you know, that's the difference. That's the difference. And so, like, what's wrong with stories? And who told you to hide and shame yourself based on the concept of your grandmother telling you don't tell people your business? The world is changing from when Granny was growing up. But you could also pick and choose and based on your morals and values, understand what you can share that is connected to your goals as a personal brand, you know, that you want to put out there.
You know, I love everything you said. When I'm thinking of whatever I want to post, I really just run it through one filter, and that is, does this help me or hurt me? If it helps me, whatever it is, right? It could be me eating a roti or whatever I'm posting. If this is something that's going to hurt me or potentially hurt me or hurt opportunities or whatever, then nah, this is not something I'm going to post. But other than that, everything you said, the relatability is always going to be there. People want to, we're in a world now where people want to know who they're doing business with. And even if they don't do business with you, people still like escapism. They're on social media to see what some of their favorite people are doing, to see what they're up to and whatnot. And you'd be surprised where there are so many people who don't do business with you, but they follow you so much that when somebody comes up to them and they say,
Yeah.
hey, do you know somebody does this? They're the first people to recommend you, right?
Exactly.
So that's critical. Now, following up with what you were talking about, Xayli, you have a lot of people who don't want to do personal brands because, or they don't want to niche down in their personal brand because they do not want to be pigeonholed. I don't want to be the tech guy because I'm more than just tech. I don't want to be the marketing guy because I'm more than just marketing. What do you say to people who do not want to niche down or showcase a specialization because in fear that pigeonholing themselves is going to now block all of the opportunities that they could potentially get? Because that's a big one in the Caribbean.
Well, I honestly think that you should respect your journey as a human being and understand that your specialization is going to shift, you know, from season to season. You niching down does not mean that you have to say, I am this forever. We're humans. We shift and evolve and we change. And I want you to give that's the beauty of a personal brand versus a straight up business brand. That business wants to be here 100 years later doing the same thing. Now, a personal brand, you're a person first. And when you don't niche yourself down, when you're operating in that zone that Karen spoke about, you're thinking of yourself and you're not thinking about your customer or client, or you're so focused on the now that you're not letting future potential opportunities and people tap into who you are and what you can do for them. So you're blocking your blessings, first of all, because you're thinking too small. The second thing is you can't serve everybody and you cannot be known for everything. So like I said before, pick a season and be the tech guy. Be that tech guy for, you know, a year, 2, 3 years. Make your money from that. Now, the beauty of that also is if you're the tech guy and you become known for tech, on your back end, when you convert people, let them know, hey, we do marketing as well. You understand? Like, but you have to have a point where you are attracting people. It's kind of like having, what's the I'm thinking about a mall that has like lots of different food in the food. It's kind of like being a food court,
Yeah.
basically. Yes, versus being known as the best restaurant on the avenue, right? Like,
That's very good.
that would be my thought. Yeah.
That's a very good analogy, and I mean that's a big one because you have a lot of our content creators slash influencers who they specialize in something, maybe or maybe not, but then they want to now attract every single opportunity as possible, and they say yes to every single brand deal, every single company that reaches out to them. It's yes, yes, yes. You want me to market mice or mice? I'm gonna market that. You want me to market
Paper.
wipes, paper, you name it. I'm marketing everything because I don't want to niche down, because I want to work with all of these brands and market to them. Xayli, in your expertise,
Yeah.
and Cole, I kind of took over. I'm sorry, come in after this. But in your expertise, Xayli, what is the future of the people that say yes to every single brand? Is there a long-term future? Does it damage you? What
Yeah.
happens with that?
Yeah, you're diluting your brand to build other people's quote unquote. First of all, if you really want longevity in sponsorships and partnerships, stop thinking in a transactional way, right? Think on a long-term relationship basis with your audience and the brand. You'll get paid so much more because if you're building an audience of moms, right? They will be interested. When you're making a decision of working with a brand, like, you want to make sure that there's payoff for the brand to hire you again and trust within the audience that you're building. So I think a lot of us aren't thinking about the specific audience that we are building when it comes to being an influencer or being a creator. And you have to think relationship versus transaction. Yeah, you might get a little money here for promoting the product, but if the brand doesn't see that back end kick or the return because your audience is the wrong audience, or only 5% of your audience want a mouse or a mice, then they're not going to get a return. They're never going to work with you again. And you're going to burn yourself out working with a bunch of brands that are just not connected to what you're doing versus working in a specific segment where you can build long-term relationships. I don't want a partnership unless it's 6 months to a year to where I can really nurture my audience and share about the brand. And the brand is also seeing like, oh, okay, we've been in this bucket for a bit. People are understanding. People are liking the product. People are buying. Now we're getting testimonial. Like that's think about relationships versus transaction. I feel like we are very transactional in the Caribbean, even for we were speaking about the Carnival businesses. Think about relationships, the relationship you're building with your client versus just the transaction of the day that they're going to have, which is the problem with the marketing. They're thinking about transactions. That's it. There's no relationship.
I agree 100%. So switching a bit from, the content creators and influencers, I want to get a bit more, I want to focus a bit more on business owners. So I think a common pushback that you tend to get, or one tends to get from business owners, is that they know they need to do video. They've seen all the reports, they've seen all of the, the tips and tricks, and this is what you need to do. Videos where it's at right now. Their biggest challenge, though, is the resources for it, because we know that video marketing can be a bit pricey depending on who you work with, and if they don't have the internal resources, they'll just opt out of it. So what would you tell, what advice or what tips, I should say, I don't want to use the word tips, but what would you tell business owners on how they can properly leverage video marketing on a budget, especially when you consider them against wider, bigger businesses that have the resources to do it?
Yeah, I really think that people overthink creating video content. And I think a lot of it begins with there's no connection to their ideal customer or client. Most people come into it only thinking about themselves. And so when you start with that perspective, yes, you're going to be worried about, I don't have this, I don't have that. Marketing is really a conversation that you're having with your ideal customer or client. I don't care what everybody else is doing online. If you don't understand your target market, if you don't understand the psychology or the way that your customer is thinking, if you don't understand how your product is or service is solving those problems, then you're going to think about other things that are menial, like what I have on today, what camera I have, what microphone I have. You're speaking into the heart and soul of someone else. You have a direct connection when you're on camera to that person. And we're in a time where people want that. They want that direct connection because we don't have it in person as much as we used to. So I would say, even in your environment, like, take yourself out of your own head. Like, now I could look back of, like, in Trinidad, if I was in Trinidad, I would be in the bush all the time, on the beach creating content, like things that, like, I see now and I'm like, wow, like, but of course, it's really connecting to what is your ideal customer or client looking for. And then you craft your messaging and your conversation around that, but use what you have around you. Get started. That's what I would say, to be honest.
We have seen a woman come out on platforms like LinkedIn here in Trinidad a lot and talk about how, they don't really want to put themselves out there. Video is, I feel seen on video, right?
You're
And if
supposed to be seen.
right, you're supposed to be seen, right? But they don't want, but video makes them feel seen, right? So they don't want to put themselves out there. So I tell people, look at the other mediums, look at blogging, look at podcasting to get comfortable to put yourself out there. But in the case of video, right? For women who are just extremely apprehensive and don't have the confidence to come out on video, because I feel like, well, look at Xayli. Xayli looks like she has this dreamy camera setup. She's always done. The frames is done. I can't show up like a Xayli, you know. What do you tell the women who just don't have that confidence to get started on video when you are starting to work with them?
I'll tell you, go back and look at my first video. I didn't have the
Did
things I have
you
now.
do you even still have it up, or did you take it
Of
down?
course. Why would I take it down? That's a part of my legacy.
I'm joking.
It's there. You
Yeah.
have to see where I started to really connect with where I am today, right? Or the content that I've created, or how I've grown, how my messaging has changed. I didn't start like I am now. I didn't have a studio. I was in the kitchen in my New York apartment. And I was using the tools that I had. I had my phone. I invested in a ring light, and Lord knows I paid $200 for that thing. I still have it. I won't throw it away. Um, but like, that was a huge investment at that time. So I would say your goals are not big enough if that's what you're worried about. And if you would like to stay in a mediocre space or place, then continue where you are. And that might sound a bit harsh, but I need you to sit and reassess your goals and where you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. I
I feel
hit
like
you in
I
your
get
chest,
drip up.
Karen.
I feel like I got drip up. I was expecting something soft and sweet. Xayli's like, no.
No.
You mentioned, where you see yourself in the next, few years and that sort of thing. What I want to know, like, for you, where do you see the future of video and video marketing going in the next few years? We all keep hearing that, it's big, it's where it's at, and that sort of thing. But where do you see it going?
I'm so sorry. I did not hear you.
Technical difficulties.
Try it again.
I'm gonna try again.
Can you hear now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was asking you, where do you see the future of video and video marketing going over the next few years?
I see all the things that people don't want to do. I see more transparency. I see a lot of being seen and visibility. I mean, I'm kidding, but I'm also very serious.
Oh, you're very serious.
Yeah. That's what I see. I see, how are you different from what else is out there? How are you differentiating yourself versus what's out there? I see more honesty, more candid conversations, more of how I did XYZ, how I got XYZ. Like, I really see exactly what we spoke about today, moving into the future. I see us moving out of being highly edited and perfect and moving more into, can we have a genuine conversation? Like I'm speaking to a friend or a family member. That's what I see. First of all, the pandemic was no joke. And
Hmm.
so a lot of people lost innate connections and created connections online. So if you are looking to build a brand online, there's no time like now because people are really disconnected and they're looking for connections. And everyone is in their phones. I know even in that studio right now, there are phones right on the desks right there, right? Like and so, even when you're in your home or you're listening on the radio right now, you have your phone right next to you. We're looking for connections outside of the ones that we have immediately around us. And now we're looking for information that is embedded inside of those connections. So I would say that's really what I'm seeing. Genuine connections, relationships, people showing up as if, we're here on the phone talking together, basically. That's really what I see.
I love it.
I got a lot of ideas. This conversation was very good. I got a lot of ideas. Now, for people who are thinking about leveling up in their video marketing for 2024, right? What are some of the tools that people should be looking at if they are looking to level up in their video content creation?
Oh, what level are we speaking? Are we speaking beginner? Are we speaking
Oh,
midway?
I forgot I'm speaking to the boss of video marketing, right? Okay. So we're talking to the beginners, right? So right now maybe I have a 3-year-old Samsung phone or a 3 or 4-year-old iPhone. And I'm now thinking to myself, I want to start creating some content. I have nothing, right? Just this 3 or 4-year-old phone. What are some of the things to get started in the beginner level that I could go after?
I would say the first thing that you really genuinely need to upgrade and lean in is your mindset, right? So that's the first upgrade that you need to make. Um, if you're not showing up enough with your 3-year-old phone, you're not going to show up even more with a $2,000 camera. So that's the first thing that we want to just level set.
Glad you said that because a lot of people say I need to upgrade my camera first. So I'm gonna buy the latest iPhone,
Mhm.
the latest Android before I get started. Go ahead.
So that's the first thing. Like Karen said, we're gonna, we're gonna level set and upgrade the mindset first of knowing that first of all, before I upgrade, I could be doing what I'm doing consistently with what I have because I know that what I'm doing is building bigger or, building for the future. Then as you upgrade, you could definitely buy an upgraded phone, like, whatever we're in 2024 now. I don't know what phones are out there. I'll be very honest. I probably bought my phone 3 years ago. I'm not like, I don't update my phones, but it's also because I don't record a lot with my phones. So
Oh,
if you're looking to invest, which is not true, I do record a lot. It depends on the type of content. Behind the scenes, I'm on my phone all the time. I also just invested in an Osmo Pocket, but it's because I was using my phone all the time. Right. So I wasn't waiting till I had the Osmo to create. We see Karen with the Osmo in his hand. So I knew I was using my phone a lot, and then I upgraded to the Osmo to do the work that I was doing with my phone. So behind the scenes, more of short form content. We use it for long form content. Sometimes you definitely can use it for long form content. If you have the creator bundle, it comes with a microphone and a tripod and different aspects of the tool. But I would say that's a better investment than a phone, to be honest, because the quality is amazing. You're
absolutely.
able to take it around with you. Like now, when I'm traveling, when I put that in my bag, I know I'm going to get fire quality. So that would be the tool that I would say, aside from a phone, or even if you have a 3-year-old phone, I would invest in an Osmo versus getting the newest phone because I don't see it becoming outdated anytime soon. And when I say anytime soon, of course, in the tech world, you could be outdated in a year. But I would say I could see me using my Osmo in the next 3 years still, just because of the size, the way that it works,
Software updates.
software updates, the efficiency of it all. And I also trust DJI as a company, which is the company that makes it. They really care about the products that they're making, and they're constantly innovating and updating. So that is the one tool that I would really say get Osmo. Yeah.
And if it's one thing, right? So when you get the creator bundle with the Osmo Pocket 3, you do get the new DJI mic too. But you know,
Yes.
one thing I loved and what is one of the things that sold me on it, the fact that I just picked up the new DJI mic to another one, and you can wirelessly connect two microphones,
Yes.
put this down on your desk and conduct interviews.
You
Like,
definitely can.
there's just so much use case scenarios with it. Now, if you're talking to somebody who is at the advanced level, they have a DSLR, they have the latest phone, they probably have a decent mic. No, Amazon has a lot of $20 microphones that people are getting right now. I'm seeing that pop up a lot more. If you're talking to the advanced user that is looking to get some of the aesthetics that you have, if you see how good she looks compared to me, and you'll see it just now, how do we upgrade to some of these things that you got going on?
I would say your lighting is gonna really make a difference, right? If you follow me on Instagram, you can see like I share my studio all the time, so you'll see the behind the scenes of what my studio actually looks like. But I will say, oh my gosh, one thing that my husband and I are always doing is building over studio spaces. So if you follow me, you'll see like smaller spaces, because I know people are like, well, I don't have all that space. Like when I am like thinking about where I want to live, I think about the brain of our operation first and everything else after. But that's just me as a business owner. So your lighting is going to make the most difference, whether you have a large space or a small space. Invest in your lighting. That will automatically upgrade things for you effortlessly. And so after your lighting, because you can still have good lighting with a phone. So it really is your lighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I would say like invest your money into lighting that can really change the way that your video looks. And then after that, you can think about things like background and building a set, and then upgrading your cameras to DSLRs. And the other thing that really helps me to show up crisp is the software that I use to stream. So I use Ecamm Live, and that allows for me to show up differently as well.
Hold on one second. We just got a technical difficulty. Hold on one second. Oh no. It's Zoom.
Zoom is zooming.
Our Zoom is doing, we're getting a robotic voice right now.
Oh
no. Okay, Xayli, we're gonna have to wrap up because I don't know what's going on with our Zoom connection, right?
No worries.
Oh my, why?
To the meat and potatoes.
Oh my goodness.
Zoom said, you know what, it's Friday.
Zoom is zooming.
Tired.
Hold on, Xayli, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear both of you.
Okay,
Yeah.
hold on.
Yeah, I really wish the mess up didn't happen. It's all good. If you enjoyed today's episode, please, if you're on any of the platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, brain fart for a second, any of the podcast platforms, please, rate the podcast. And if you really enjoyed the episode, please drop a review. Always love to hear the feedback from you, because this is who we do the content for, right? Drop a review. The reviews help to grow the podcast all across the world, and people are looking for new podcasts to check out. They read the reviews, so drop a review. That would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me on any social media platform at KERONROSC, or check out the KarenRose.com website to learn more about building your digital presence and monetizing your platforms. And then don't forget, you can stay up to date with the podcast at digipreneur.fm. FM. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you guys in the next episode. Next episode is going to be 150. My goodness. Have an enjoyable week and take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Karan Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Karan Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.